Hey everybody, Kaysha here, and today I am here with my friend
Jennifer Guskin,
and we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking, and here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's Elk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the Karis Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the Jay Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: a house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government, and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city, house, or state without permission, or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the Karis Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on, we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the Karis Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate. And we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you everybody for your time and considerations. And thank you for all the support. And we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the Karis Project podcast. Today we have with us Vic Lagina. I can't say that with a straight face. And
it's okay.
And we have Elizabeth Spraggins, and obviously my daughter, Vic and Elizabeth were both in the adult industry, and they both left and had different paths, and they had a friendship between them during the time. So we'll get you guys to introduce to your audience. So I'm gonna pick on you first, Elizabeth. Ladies first. So introduce yourself to our audience.
Oh, wow. I get the big screen. Hi, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Spraggins. I'm a brand new person, reborn again after living a very interesting life of entertainment for 15 years. In one capacity or another, I chose to live life according to my own rules. And it landed me in some very interesting situations that taught me a lot. And I, during that path, happened to meet our esteemed Vic Lagina, who is an amazing human being, and I can't wait to do this show today.
All right. So now we'll get Vic to come in, and you can introduce yourself to our audience.
Okay. So I am Vic Lagina, and I'm a 20-year veteran in the adult entertainment industry. I met Elizabeth, I would say probably around 2010, maybe a little bit sooner. And everything ended for me around COVID, fortunately, because the business was pretty much literally draining the life out of me in a lot of ways. I didn't realize it until I had left it. After leaving it and trying to figure out what to do next, I decided to just write a tell-all called Filthy, The Rise and Pending Death of Vic Lagina, where I talk about the entire journey as well as what has been happening in the porn industry since my departure, which has been very interesting to say the least.
So speaking about your departure, you want to kind of give us a little bit of why you did, because you said things changed at COVID. What was different about COVID that you were just like, I'm out?
Well, I think a lot of it was leading up to COVID. COVID was more the catalyst. You had the advent of the performer platforms, OnlyFans, and the like, but they really didn't get strong until the pandemic, when everyone was home, having nothing to do except for masturbating. And you would find that a lot of the performers that I was working with a lot, they didn't want to go back to the studio system because they wanted to control their own brands. They wanted to make all the money, and I don't blame them at all, especially with the company that I was working for, then known as MindGeek. That was a third iteration of the company that I worked for. And I would say they were the most horrible of the bunch for a lot of reasons that came to light in 2020 when COVID was in full swing. But a lot of it really came down to the fact that the new branch or the new upcoming performers were ones that really couldn't articulate consent very well while in production, which I thought was a slippery slope to be on, especially if you were a producer that was very mindful of people's comfort and their consent. And when you have performers that aren't acting like adults by not speaking up, you really don't know what else you can really do at that point. So it was a good time for me to find my exit and find bliss outside of the porn industry.
Because you found things that were going a little bit more sideways and you were like, well, I'm out. And so, Elizabeth, being a performer and stuff like that, what did you see from your end? You as a producer, what were you finding around that time?
It's just going to piggyback off of what Vic just said. Yeah, the COVID thing, that was the beginning of the end for me, but for different reasons. I didn't have the inside track about the producers and the parent companies, but what I did have was a vision about what was happening to the industry itself. As a performer, I was seeing the kind of content that was being requested by the consumer and the kind of content that was being handed down through scripts and the kind of content that independent producers, OnlyFans people, were starting to pump out to the public, no pun intended. And it all had to do with the family-oriented roles, the family-oriented erotica. And I started to see this more and more and more. And then that sort of coincided with the public awareness increasing of the child trafficking seriousness and just how massive it really was. So it's not like this hush hush thing that some stranger behind the 7-Eleven commits. This is now a massive global organization that is harming underage people. And when I started to see that trickle and then tsunami into the entertainment I was selling for a living, that's when I knew it was time for me to get out.
Well, I mean, that's reasonable. Anybody with half a brain should understand that doing things to children is very wrong, right? I mean, the fact that we even have to sit down and say these things out loud, I mean, it's beyond reason. But you mentioned something about, Vic, that you said with the younger people coming in and they're having more difficulties. Is this something that you like? What other thing? Can you kind of expound on that? About
Sure. So when I was in it, in the very first couple, I guess the first 15 years or so, before you had people that were born prior to 1996, 1997, you had my generation, the generation after, which were the millennials, where we just had a discussion about shoots. What are your do's and don'ts? What are your yeses and nos? To make sure everyone was on the same page, to make sure that there was no lines crossed, to make sure that everyone felt comfortable on set. And it seemed to be that when you started getting the ones coming from, like, 1996 and onward, you're talking 19 years old, 20 years old, 21 years old, that whole being able to communicate that I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, they didn't really do any of that. Instead, they wouldn't say anything. So when I'm rolling and I'm shooting a scene, I'm waiting to hear cut, stop, no, any of these words. And when you're
Red.
not hearing them, you're assuming everything is fine. And then you would do an exit interview. How did your shoot go? Were you treated okay? I mean, Elizabeth heard these conversations time and time again. This was the system.
Oh,
And they
yeah.
said everything was fine. And then you get like someone tweeting a couple days later, or in some cases 2 years later, that their lines were crossed. A lot of that was going
Mm-hmm.
on when everyone was losing their mind during COVID. But I was like, okay, well, what else could we have done? And they were like, well, I was trying to tell you with my eyes. And I'm like, huh, okay. And then when the
what?
company, yeah,
What?
when the company started validating that, and validating that, or maybe there's a reason why they're not speaking up and making excuses for adults. That's when I was like, okay, I think it's time for me to go because the rules no longer make sense.
I think that's around the time when I started noticing security cameras high up in the studios to catch all the off camera action. So the directors in the studio and the crew could protect themselves from these accusations. That's when I started noticing those. And I was like, yo, what is that about? And they said, well, given that so-and-so just accused this director here of forcibly XYZ, we need proof that none of this happens should this accusation come forward again.
Are,
Yeah, which even okay, it doesn't matter after a tweet is out. If you have the
Right.
video that proves you
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, you still have to go through that due process of clearing your name when the
Right.
damage is already done. So to me,
Yeah.
it was like, well, I think I've made enough money, and I'm kind of tired of this business anyway. So time to say goodbye.
so, Kaysha,
But at this point, at least with those cameras, people aren't going to jail,
Right.
yes. So,
But
Kaysha, sorry, go finish what you're saying.
oh no, I'm just chatting. Vic's my
It-
buddy.
You're the Gen Z, so you know about the communication issues in your generation. So, you want to kind of expound on that?
Yeah, I was just saying that I was actually really thinking about that because in my generation, a lot of them are very non-confrontational. They don't like to communicate a lot of things. Kind of, they think that a lot of things should just be understood. That you should just know, like that this is crossing a boundary with someone or this is inappropriate. Like unless you actually like tell them, that you can do this. But it's messed up because if you're in an environment when you're doing that kind of work, you have to be a communicator. It's not like when you're at a regular job working at Walgreens and somebody comes up to you and says something inappropriate, and then they blatantly cross the line because you're working at Walgreens and you're not supposed to have those kind of conversations. It's like you're in a job where you actually need to communicate, whether even if it was regular acting, even if it wasn't even adult industry, you would still need to communicate, because if something is harming you, you need to let the producer know. But my generation of people is very sensitive, and I do think it's because of a lot of the grooming that they've had in school. I think a lot of people from my dad's generation, maybe your guys as well, they don't think of it as much because you guys had, like, if someone said something wrong, you got punched in the face. It was straight up and down. Like, it was, like, you had consequences right away. Whereas my generation, a lot of them were shown like things in school, like from a young age, that were pornographic, or like,
Wow.
sex ed is what they called it.
Kills
And
me.
I remember in grade 3 or 4 when we first started sex ed, and they showed us video cartoons of like naked people getting in bed and like doing things, and it was weird to
Oh,
me.
I would have lost my mind.
Yeah, and my dad was away at work, like he worked on the rigs,
Oof.
and so I couldn't even be like, "Hey man, like what's this?" And by the time he came back, I forgot, So it's like I didn't think of it as something serious because I was a kid, but a lot of those things I think have really trained people in my generation to be acceptable to things that make them uncomfortable, because from a very young age we were shown things that are not appropriate for kids, and a lot of boundaries were broken by our school system, and so we allow more things to happen to us even though we don't want it to happen, because we don't know how to break those boundaries, because we were trained in school to let the teacher break the boundaries, the librarian, the counselor, and everything, and it was from all angles. And I think a lot of people don't think about how much psychological trauma my generation is dealing with. Like, it's why a lot of them are crazy with like blue hair and like, like screaming online. And I know that's the excessive extreme version, but it's like,
I have my own theories
think,
about that.
yeah, it's some of them probably did need to be punched in the face. I'm not gonna lie, but it's like I think a lot of it the lack of consequences. Oh, thumbs up. See, the computer agrees. Lack of consequences, and also the indoctrination that they got in school. And a lot of these kids were being abused.
That's what it is.
Like, a lot of kids were being abused, and I knew so many kids. Like, it's crazy to me. And now that I'm an adult and I know like how like I help a lot of victims of trafficking, I'm just, like you said, this is a global thing, and it's become more clear to me just how many people grew up in abusive homes. And it's just the consequences. It makes so much sense why people behave the way that they do.
One of the things I'll say is that people think abuse is just beating your kid, but giving them no boundaries whatsoever is worse, because they don't know when to stop. And you watch some of these people, and it's like you have to run through a minefield because you don't know. Like, it's like you have a piece of cake on the table. It's like, can I eat that last piece of cake? And you're like, they don't say anything, so you eat it, and then they blow up at you.
Well, when you establish that life is based upon how you feel about something, then feelings change, then the rules change. But when you establish a concrete set of this is right, this is wrong, then they know what to cross, what not to cross. But see, a lot of people today don't have that established. How do I get this thing called life right? So when they feel something and it doesn't feel good, even though it might be the right thing to do, that's when all the shouting starts. That's when all the blue hair starts. That's when the protesting burns the cities down. And that's when people get accused of things. And that's when, people cross lines, like taking people that aren't theirs and relocating them to places that they don't belong.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, I mean, that whole idea of like what you just said there, because it feels good. Well, I'm like, crack feels good, but that doesn't mean I should do that, right? Like, this is where you have to start thinking about things, and this is where the natural consequences for actions were. And again, Vic, I can understand now when you're sitting down, you're like, how can I do my job when I can't have somebody that's going to tell me if they don't like something or not? Like, how do you know? Like, it's impossible.
Well, there's also another line to it, which is a performance. you know, when like I would
Right.
look at some of these scenes that were the ones that were under contention or whatever. What I'm seeing still is a performer performing on a porn production. Okay. So it was a very fine line where you're like, I didn't see a line cross, and more importantly, I didn't hear the key words that we were taught.
Right.
So what are we supposed to do? Because we're not mind readers and we're not eye readers. And the answer really was, okay, well, let the generation below me decide that and figure it out for themselves, because clearly I have aged out. I went the way of the Pornosaurus, and that was fine.
No, no, you didn't age
No,
out. No, you didn't age out.
well,
You have an integrity and a quality that isn't practiced anymore.
But
okay, well, I'll take that too.
honestly, like, I'll just give an example because I've been a substitute teacher here in the US, as well as I'm obviously a student back home, growing up in Canada. And a lot of, like, when I was growing up in elementary, for example, if a kid came at me sideways or they tried to like push me or like hurt me, I beat them up. Like, I just straight up like it. Don't try to put your hands on me, because I'm not gonna go home and have my granny tell me like you need to finish it. So that's like how I was raised. You can't come home and complain about it. Like, you better finish it. Don't start anything, but finish it. So I was raised that way. But in school, when I would push back against like bullies and try to like defend myself, I ended up getting counseling. They put me in counseling in school for defending myself against a bully, and they punished me and punished consistently children who were trying to defend themselves and create boundaries. And then that's, I think, also on top of why our generation is so like that way. Like, we're so afraid to say things a lot of the times because you are trained not only to look at the abuse that they're pushing on you, but when the teachers abuse you or other students, they literally punish the victim, or they punish the person who's trying to defend themselves. And I see this even now when I've been a substitute teacher, when even little boys will try to defend themselves, especially the little boys. When they try to defend themselves, the teachers will set them up to be further. And so
The
I
purpose,
think, yeah, go ahead.
I said the purpose of creating and maintaining a victim mentality is that the person is looking for a savior. The person's looking for someone to create change, to make a way out. They're looking for someone to have the answer. And when the school system or the government or a trafficker has someone convinced that they have no control over what's happening, they have no say over what's going on with them, then they look outside of themselves. They look outside of their own power or their own will for someone to come in and create the answers. Well, what if that person who has all the answers doesn't have that victim's best interest in mind? Then you get stuck in this cycle of abuse, rescue, repeat, right?
I kind of want to circle back to something that you mentioned, Elizabeth, where you talked about the content and the push for the content of of going toward that underage thing. Because I know, Vic, you can weigh in because you saw it from the production side. But can you guys give us, Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about what you saw as a performer and why you're like, I'm out on this thing.
I won't get explicit because this is sure a family show, but it started very early on, but it was an isolated incident here, or maybe one or two scenes every 6 months that just rubbed me the wrong way. But I'm not trying to get nasty with y'all, but it was the whole, mommy daughter thing, or maybe when they started introducing the step family member in it. And, I'm a stepmother. I'm also a grandmother. And I'm kind of like
the incest dynamic.
Yeah.
Oh man, it killed me. It absolutely killed me. And by 2020, it had gotten so bad because people were desperate for that shock value of what will somebody buy? What will somebody pay for? And imagine if you see someone on the internet who's looking for that particular type of entertainment, they can't get it legally because it's illegal. So where are they most likely to purchase this sort of entertainment? Something that's faux, or something that's pseudo, or something that's labeled step family. These are the types of entertainments that are legally available for purchase. And that started to saturate the work that I was getting. It started to saturate the content that people were creating. And I'm just like, and in 2020, people had nothing better to do than either do research, have personal, intimate time in their home, or, just go crazy. And I chose doing research, and it bit me right in the butt. But yeah, I became just certainly aware of how horrifying and how massive and how global the child trafficking situation really was. And it broke my heart as a human being. I couldn't be around it anymore.
Yeah.
So, Vic, you want to kind of give us a little bit about what you saw from the production end?
Yeah. The requests started coming in, I would say probably around 2015 or 2015-ish. And then they put this guy under contract, this guy Jordy. He was a Spanish kid. I say kid, but I mean, he was really 22 years old, but very small in stature. And a lot of it, they wanted to pair him with large in stature MILFs and go along that end. And it was weird, but I looked at him and I was like, well, I see an Adam's apple. I see the stubble. I see the fact that he is of age, obviously. So, okay. And there was a comedic element to it. But then it started
Yeah.
getting like more and more and more. And then, after I left, I saw that they put this other kid, this ginger kid, under contract. And I was like, okay, he looks 12. And thank God I'm done now,
Yeah.
because that would be very weird. And yeah, they know exactly what they were doing. They know exactly what they were going for, because all of our marching orders came from the searches that were on Pornhub. So, you had your trends. You had squirting was big for a while, and then it morphed into the whole step brother, step sister, step this, step that, and step everything. And then it just kept getting more and more bizarre, where even like towards the end, I was coming in, and we're not even talking anything that was like blurring any lines. It was just like, what are we doing now? Like, I was at a loss of what exactly we were shooting. And I would just be like, okay, look, I'll take a swing at it. I'll do my best. But it was just getting more and more ridiculous as time went on. So, when it was all over, aside from saying goodbye to the money that was coming in, I was okay with it all being over, because it was just getting to the point where I was like, I don't even know. And then of course the big Pornhub bombs drop in late 2020 with the New York Times article, and Lila Mickelwait's work of what she had done and all the things that she went after and discovered. So, I always say things work out the way they're supposed to, and it did time out exactly as it was supposed to for me. And I was grateful that I got out when I did.
All right. I'm going to weigh in on this. We have to take a short commercial break to hear from the Pillow Man.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
I love that guy.
Yes. So if you need anything for MyPillow, you can go to mypillow.com/Karis.
I took a picture of it.
Awesome. 800-845-2942. Use the promo code Karis, or you see the stuff in the ticker. Yeah. So with Pornhub's based out of Canada, right? And what
Is it really?
Oh yes, it is. Oh yes, it is.
I thought it was in London.
Montreal,
but the guys who have the equity firm that owns the parent corporation is based out of Ottawa, the capital. Yes. And
Oh,
so, of
wow.
Well, hold on. Did you hear that really the owners of MindGeek are still tied to it?
course they are. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's been discovered during the lawsuits. That just came out. That's why Lila Mickelwade is like a hero of mine, because she is
Wow.
relentless and she calls them out every step of the way, and
Oh,
it's quite wonderful in a lot of ways.
Yes.
clip sometimes.
Which?
What's that?
Yes.
Lila
Yes.
Nicole,
Yes.
that's a lady we. Oh yeah, she's out
She
there. Yeah.
this one thing that the ownership there is one of the guys that are on the ownership. He was a former superintendent of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. He dealt with organized crime and drug trafficking. He helped to make one of the most successful cannabis dispensaries in Canada, which the cannabis industry, even though it's legalized, is still heavily entrenched with organized crime. So you get this guy in your leadership, you get a lawyer that's special criminal lawyer, and a guy that's dealing with the policies. And when you look at what they're doing and how they're defending this, it makes sense. And then you have Justin Trudeau, who has a non-disclosure agreement for $2.5 million for sleeping with raping a girl under the age of 15, and that he's
I thought he
taking
was
money.
gay.
He's a pedophile. He does anything. He's disgusting,
Oh,
as far as I'm
oh my
concerned.
God.
And then taking
Doesn't
money from
surprise
the
me.
cartels, and you understand why this kind of thing is happening, because they're
Yeah.
raping kids and putting them up there for profit. And that's why they're not doing anything. They're getting protection.
Speaking of which, when I saw the intro, when I saw your intro, I did about 2 years of life coaching, and I saw all walks of life. But more importantly, this started happening. I started coaching, and I'm not going to say anything specific because I don't want to out anybody. But there were the border patrol agents down when the invasion started to happen, and one of the people that I coached was one of the agents down there, and would time after time after time tell me that there were thousands, and I mean thousands of children, and they are all housed in a separate unit at the border away from the adults. And a lot of them are being brought across the border by coyotes and then abandoned there. But what happens to these children after they get to the United States is a whole other ball of wax. Like, they are put in this area and then they are escorted by some of these agents to airports to be picked up by strangers who claim to be family, right? But then these family members are not vetted, and the children are never checked on after they depart from, for those flights. And over and over and over again, this poor individual would try to talk to someone, to get someone to listen, and nobody would listen. Nobody would check up on these children. So when I started hearing that these children are going missing, and what is like the United States now a portal to send these children worldwide, or simply into the homes of predators who are going to farm them out to other people, this is actually happening.
Yeah.
What? Nobody's doing anything about it, and this is happening at taxpayer dollars.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
it is.
when
Yes,
you
it
also
is.
when you also consider the Child Protective Services, and I started to look into this because my daughter, she was taken by the Child and Family Services in Winnipeg like over 20 years ago. She ended up getting molested because of being put there. They took her without provocation and all of this stuff, and they fought tooth and nail. I had to fight 3.5 years to get her back after losing all parental rights. And where I came from in Winnipeg, they took children and they put them in hotels, knowing full well that they were being sex trafficked. It was on the front page of the news, and they did it anyway, right behind one of their main buildings. Like 11 and 12-year-old girls are selling themselves outside, and they do nothing. That's the kind of thing that we live. I can't stand that. I'm sorry. Like,
I honestly, you guys, I had no idea. I'm living in my own happy bubble, living life large, right? Living life big and crazy and happy with all this money, and, just thinking about me and myself. But 2020, as awful as it had been for several years in a row, it was a miracle that people in general needed in order to understand that these things are really happening. And while we're ignoring other people outside of our happy little lives, there are millions of people being affected by this worldwide global sex trafficking ring. This is real. This is very, very real. And once someone sees this, once you see the evil that is behind this and how determined they are to keep things going, I had to find a way out. I had to meet my maker. I had to get right with me, with, with Jesus. I had to, because once I understood, once I saw it, you kind of, your brain melts and you're like, this is real. There are people who actually do this, and now it's in the news all the time and people are numb to it. They're numb to it so that they can ignore it. I think that's one of the reasons they blew everybody up with it.
It's because they condition people to accept it. Like when you look at this, like look through social media, like you mentioned, the girls that are coming out today. Like you see some of these girls that are on OnlyFans and stuff, and they have stuffed animals. They dress like they're 12.
I can't.
And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, no. Right? And then if you even look at the way that they've conditioned society to look at like women that look like little boys, right? And so forth. And you look at like some of these models, they look like little boys. Like, I don't want to see that, right? Like, and so they normalized this, and then they showed you on like, say, movies that this is what trafficking looks like all of the time. But that's not the way it happened. Like in Canada,
correct.
90%, over 90% of the trafficking victims are Canadians. People are coming here to get trafficking victims because it's out of control here. It's insane.
It's almost like the United States has become Grand Central Station for every other country to cherry pick which victims they're going to take back to their nations. They're coming through the southern border. They're coming from overseas, the Asian areas. They're coming from Europe, and they come here, I think, because the traffickers are so heavily protected, because everyone in an official capacity is for sale. They've all been blackmailed because they're doing their own crimes and they don't want to get, the repercussions happening to them for their own crimes. So they're allowing these things to happen, and people around the world are taking advantage of that. And it's creating a perfect cesspool for all of these innocent people, to have their I don't know. I'm working on my second cup of coffee here.
That's fine. I mean, but these are things that need to be said, because I look at what the government is doing. My daughter and I, we've done a lot of this on podcasts, and the government is creating the circumstances for a lot of this to happen. Like we listen to, when they're pushing the guys that have money and that are owning these porn companies like Pornhub and all these places that are putting up this stuff of like straight up rape and pedophilia, right, on their tube sites, and then now they're pushing other people to content to make them look younger, to condition people to start going to that trend of younger. You're having this driving force for pedophilia. Now you have the government that's not, they're not doing anything to stop this, because like right now they should be sending the Royal Canadian Mounted Police into the offices of Pornhub and seizing everything and taking out all of the rape and pedophilia out of there and charging every single person that's involved in it, right? Like,
makes you wonder why they're not doing that.
This is exactly it. Why are you leaving a repository of like rape victims and pedophiles, like pedophile victims, sitting there while people are profiting off of this? Right?
Creating that victim mentality so someone can swoop in with the answer that may not be in their best interest.
Well, the answer is always worse than the problem that they created, right? Like, I agree with Reagan. Like the worst thing you want to hear is, "Hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to help." No, you ain't. Right?
God, Reagan was amazing. I love that guy.
I've never seen the government solve a problem. Never.
No.
I mean, they should be making sure criminals are off the street and then leave everybody else alone, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day. So how, like, when you saw this in this, what were the performers saying, Vic, when you were dealing with this type of push for the younger stuff, making them look like kids and doing this incest kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, they were the request coming from the head office when we were shooting. Well, I think it was like Teens Like It Big or something along those lines. Was at first they were, the pigtails, the pink, the stuffed animals, the this, the that. And then we were told we have to shy away from that because the credit card companies were saying, no, that's becoming non-compliant. So there was some guidelines on compliance of what we were allowed and not allowed to do. But that didn't stop the company from trying to push things here and there when it came to certain things. I mean, there was the phase. This was a site that they wanted us, or at least gauge some of our producers. I mean, you remember Brando, Elizabeth.
Hmm.
They came to us with this website called Shame on Her. It was an idea, and it was basically just consensual rape. And I said, no, I'm not shooting this. This is rape. It was like looking like a girl was pretending to be inebriated while guys had their way with her. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm not doing it. And then it devolved to this site called Porn Star Punishment, which was on for a couple of years or so. And that was more along the lines of a performer doing something wrong and a male performer punishing her, and she looks like she's not enjoying it. But again, it was like, okay, we're dealing with people who are putting on a performance, and we're dealing with some performers who admit to having rape fantasies. But then that came under the wire, under hot water as well. So that eventually was phased out. And so as time went on, then they start going, okay, we're going to do the whole stepmother, stepdaughter, all of that stuff. And some performers were like, yeah, no problem. Others were like, I'm good. I don't need to shoot that. But you were also in an economic climate around that time where we were in a recession and OnlyFans didn't exist yet. So people were
Hmm.
like, okay, I'll do it. We'll justify how we're going to do this because we need the money right now. And once I think the platform started taking off, OnlyFans, everything, that's when you had performers being like, "Nah, I'm good. I don't want to do that. I'll do a different kind of scene." So there was pushback when money was no longer as tight as what it used to be.
That that that's
Yeah.
that that's exactly it. The lack of money is
Yeah.
going to drive doing that. So, Elizabeth,
Mhm.
you saw this. What's your take on being on the other side of it?
I everything he just said, everything he just said. It was it was all based upon the performer's, personal preference, but then there was also that financial aspect of it because OnlyFans wasn't a thing yet. I mean, I would complain when I would get these kind of scripts and I was told that you're not really hurting anybody. This is not, your daughter, this is not your stepchild, you're an actor. This is a performance. You don't see people doing Hollywood movies, feeling bad about the roles that they play when they have to kill someone or when they have to do a love scene with someone. They're not actually doing it. I mean, well, in these types of love scenes, they were actually love scenes, right? But these people were trying to tell me that I wasn't actually harming anyone. But when I became aware of how the work that I was doing was encouraging people to fantasize and even seek these situations, it became a problem. But I was told, yeah, you're not hurting anybody. And it seemed to be the only work that I could get because the image that I promoted of myself was that of a mother, was that of an older woman, and I seemed to be a suitable fit for those types of roles, and that was awful.
So, you had did you have ever have like fans or people like that come up and say these kinds of things to you, like, or
All the time, every day, even today, all the time, all the time. I mean, I do different work now, and even now, it's it's the younger people. Hey, are you married? I'm like, yes, I'm married. And I'm also old enough to be your mother/grandmother. Huh.
Yes.
Oh no, I love older women. Well, why? Why would you like an older woman, honey? You can't have babies with me. You can't get married to me. I'm not going to be alive when you're 40. Find somebody your own age. I don't get me started.
But this, like, I mean, this is something that we're seeing because, like, with the advance of the internet and so forth, and the way that you have social media, this stuff
Mm-hmm.
has it's free access across here, and I think that this, like, I was talking to listening to people saying 9-year-olds are getting pornography. 9-year-olds
What?
should never be access. If kids, I saw a video where it was on X, and these kids, and this was even on a pay site, they got on camera with Mia Khalifa, right? And I was like she's laughing and stuff like that, but I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, these kids just went ahead and so forth. Like, obviously she was face to face, and then they got off the call. But the whole point is that these kids are being able to access this stuff, and the
Yeah,
brakes
and they
need
knew
to be put
exactly
on
who
that,
she was.
right?
Yeah, they
Parents
were
need to
like,
control their kids, and people need to take reasonable steps to make sure that this stuff just doesn't float out everywhere, right?
yep.
Well, that's why you have all of the age verification laws now that Pornhub doesn't want to comply with. So they block access in each state that has enacted them because it's a big hit to their traffic, these age verification laws. And I've tried to wrap my head around people who are very much against the age verification laws. And I've never really gotten an answer that made a lot of sense.
Right.
The argument is that, well, your information is not secure and it could be an invasion of privacy and this and that. And I say, well, anytime you buy something from any major site, you're giving your name, your credit card information, and all that. And these companies get hacked all the time. So, really, what's the
Mm-hmm.
problem? In my generation, if you wanted to buy that porno mag, it was behind the counter and you had to talk to the
Mm-hmm.
clerk. Or if you wanted to rent the porn movie, you had to go to the section in the back of the video store.
Blockbuster.
So there were safeguards. Well, I don't think Blockbuster ever had it, but there was other ones. But I
Yeah,
mean, but there were safeguards. There were safeguards,
But
and
was it
I'm not going to sit here and tell you that as someone who was underage didn't have access to porn, but it was a little
Right.
different. You would get a magazine from someone who had it, and that's how you gained access. Now it's a little different because all you have to do is click a button that says you're over 18, and bam, you're in it. And
Wow.
that is the whole reason why you have these age verification laws.
Yeah, that's what the Layla. I think that's what I saw her say as well when in a clip she was like, what's the even big deal? Because you're literally only clicking a button to say that you're
Mhm.
18. It's not even like you're putting in verification. You're just clicking a button, and you could
Right.
be lying. Like, it's not even a real. It's not foolproof, which means kids can still have access. So, like, doing that doesn't even protect. It doesn't cause any damage to anyone who's clicking the button. So I don't understand why anybody would not want that, because it's not even a safeguard. It's not even
it's
a real
Yeah,
safeguard.
but
yeah.
you talked about the for example, like Pornhub, they make money off of the amount of traffic that they drive, and
Mm-hmm.
then the ads. So if you're having something that's traffic driven, you don't want age verification because they just care about the money. They're unscrupulous in how
Mhm.
they're wanting to make money because they don't care what kind of content is there, whether it's
Right.
illegal or not. They just want the traffic, and then they're pushing for this because uh, it becomes to the point where you start getting if you start getting to that point, there becomes serious problems where you're not going to be able to stop because once people start getting to
Kind of
that,
like trafficking people.
yes,
Mhm.
it is because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of this content, some of the content there is like on those tube sites, there are people getting raped and people are watching that
Mm-hmm.
and they're watching little children and they've been conditioned to do so from all of this that's coming from the top down telling people to do this because from
Mhm.
what I've been hearing there's a lot of people that are having pushback saying I don't want to do this is nasty, it's uncomfortable, I don't want to like look like I'm a child and have some like sleep with a grandfather or grandmother because what is it doing, right? and it is going to
Who's
condition.
encouraging? Who is that entertaining? That's what I wanted to know. Who's buying this stuff?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too.
I this is yeah, this is mind blowing.
Probably.
Well, the other thing too is, I mean, I've been an advocate for saying that, and I write it in my book, that you probably shouldn't be allowed to shoot porn until you're 21,
Right.
because at 18, I mean, what really do you know? And you don't really know anything at 21 either, but at least you have a 4 year gap where you can, or a 3 year gap where you can maybe make some other decisions that are a little more sound. But you can't buy alcohol or cigarettes until you're 21. So I think porn is the same thing. You should definitely have that safeguard there to keep people from getting access, or at least make the access a little more difficult.
Well, yeah, yes. Like risk, you have to reduce risk, and the way that children are free accessing this, like that's a hard stop. That needs to be dealt with, and I think that people that take no steps, no reasonable steps, should face hard consequences, because you're
Mhm.
destroy like people will sit down and argue about people being adults, but when it comes down to children, you have no chance. Like you have zero
Mhm.
chance. You're finished. Your brain's not designed for that. Period.
What it comes down to, Dale, I believe, is that this generation and the generation immediately before it that has made such a mess of things, they have been conditioned to have someone else tell them what is right and wrong. To have
Yeah.
society who doesn't have their best interests, these traffickers, these governments, tell them what is best for them and leading them into a position to accept these things, to not create then boundaries for their own children, for their own families, so the government can come in again and tell them what's best for them, even though it may not be.
Yep.
Yes,
And
and
then
this is
use
where
that in your
going back to like the school system, and the parents need to take more
Mm-mm.
responsibility to teach their children how to think,
Yeah.
because
Right.
kids don't seem to have that understanding of like how to think, and taking away the natural consequences and the challenges that you had to go through during school. This
Mm-hmm.
has a large portion to do with this, because a lot of the times we knew that okay, you shouldn't go there, especially as guys, because if you did this, somebody might punch you in the face, and literally that would happen.
Mhm.
And then you would learn your lesson, and then come back, shake hands, maybe go for a beer when you're old enough to do so, or whatever the case may be. But they don't do that anymore, right? They shield everybody, and
Mhm.
then they push them out into the world, and guess what? Life ain't fair, right? And so
Yep.
Mhm.
forth. And that's kind of where we're at. We're kind of running up on time on this segment, but we want to come back and we want to hear about how you guys um came to become friends, and how that friendship
Mhm.
continued after, because people like to think a lot of the times that people engage in these kinds of things, that they're all terrible people, that they have no morals,
Mhm.
that they have no anything like
Terrible
that.
people.
Well, I mean, we're all terrible. We're all stupid. We all make mistakes, right? Like, I mean, I'm glad that there was no internet when I was a kid, right?
Oh man, right? Ooh, Lord.
Yeah.
Right? So, um,
Mhm.
we'll close this segment here with a prayer. We'll come back and we'll hear how these two guys became good friends, and we'll talk about some other solutions and other good stuff. So, yes, and I'll give my daughter her final thoughts here, because she sounds much better than her old man. All right. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope that you have given us this day, and help the men and women to come together to protect the children, to stop this evil and this filthy wickedness from going on, and that we could have some sensibility and common sense, and keep these children protected from these wicked people, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. All right,
Amen.
Kaysha, your
Amen.
final thoughts before we go to the next segment.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Dad, for the prayer as always. Yeah, guys. Thanks for tuning in today's segment. We're so glad to have Elizabeth and Vic on today. Yeah, this is stuff I think that's important for people to understand, because there's a whole nother world to the industry that I think people don't think of. People think of it as an entertainment. They think that it's just, this one thing or the other, but there's this whole other aspect to it. I think that people kind of need to open their eyes to understanding, because it's something that contributes to something greater, and that needs to be understood if we really want to bring about solutions. So I'm really glad that we have them on today. They're very smart, very, very smart. I actually love the conversation. I'm learning a lot. So guys, if you're watching on Lindell TV, you'll see the part 2 tomorrow. If you're watching on another platform, stay tuned. In a couple minutes, we'll catch you on the other side. So just hold tight. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. And we'll catch you in the next one. And to my dearest Karis, until we meet again, my friend, I will. Ciao. Hey everybody, Kaysha here. So today I want to talk to you a little bit real quick about Tina Peters' case. So on April 9th, 2024, myself, Maureen Steele, and Ann Vandersteel all went into the state of Colorado to file a petition for redress of grievances. Tina Peters actually also signed this petition. In fact, she actually had exculpatory evidence related to the election fraud that was outlined in the petition that was not allowed to go into the court. The petition was not brought to the floor, and as a result, Tina Peters was unlawfully imprisoned. My father, Dale Richardson, was actually tortured in the state of Colorado to suppress his evidence of treason against the United States, which was based on improper engineering controls which allowed for the spread of the COVID-19 virus, which was likewise created at Wuhan by Peter Daszak and the EcoHealth Alliance with the pathogen, which were handed over to the Chinese by the Winnipeg Biolabs. This created the circumstances for widespread election fraud. My father Dale and I are friends of Tina Peters, who has been politically persecuted for standing up for the liberty of all Americans. And she, as a sister in Christ, has been persecuted like I have for standing up for the liberty of all people. In the state of Colorado, women and Christians are being persecuted on monumental levels, and I'm calling for everyone to stand up for Tina Peters in every way possible, including using the Karis Project action plan to compel the state government to put the petition for redress of grievance to the floor so that Tina Peters can petition before the state house that belongs to the people. And if Colorado continues to deny a Republican form of government, we will implore that Congress and President Donald J. Trump initiate Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution, which guarantees a Republican form of government, to the states, and use that just power to intervene and provide what the Constitution has ordained. The time is upon us to come together and stand united as people, and let the world know that we stand together to preserve this perfect union for all Americans and our posterity. That is why, y'all already know, I'm going to leave you with my favorite quote. The greatest want of the world is the want of men. Men who cannot be bought or sold. Men who in their inmost souls are true and honest. Men who do not fear to call sin by its right name. Men whose conscience is as true to duty as needle to the pole. Men who will stand for the right, though the heavens may fall. Ciao, guys.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Karis Project podcast. And we're back again here with Vic Lagina.
Yep, say it loud.
I mean, I have a hard time saying that with a straight face. And Elizabeth Spraggins.
That's the point.
I know. And my daughter, the host, Kaysha. So we want to just kind of go back to what you guys were talking about. Like, you guys met. How long ago did you guys meet?
Long time.
I want to say it was like around 2010-ish.
Yeah.
We were shooting a series called MILFs Like It Black, and high quality production there. But Elizabeth was an extra. She started off as an extra, where she was just basically a non-sex role, and then eventually she crossed and went over into performing, and then soon enough she was always showing up on my lists. And I'm happy to say that my last shoot ever was with Elizabeth, so at least I ended on a high note.
Oh, that's so sweet. I remember I was terrified. I was always terrified. I showed up. I was actually a background person. I was just someone sitting on the set. And then I got notified. I got a phone call, and I show up in front of this big wig, and I always saw Vic as like a big wig, and I'm like, oh, this is the guy, right? This is the guy that makes all of these movies. And I'm like, oh, he terrified me. But Vic was the only person I ever worked for. His studio was the only one that scared the heck out of me, but not for any reason that you might think. It's because I respected him. Because the moment I met Vic, I knew that he was about work, about acting right, about getting things right, about producing quality. And that made me nervous, because I knew for my own self, I actually worked harder, and I came more prepared when I showed up to Vic's studio, because if I didn't get it right, I knew he would tell me. And I didn't want Vic to tell me I wasn't getting it right, because I could tell he would. So like if my hair wasn't right, or my nails wasn't right, or if I had dirty feet, because sometimes tanning spray gets stained on the feet. Oh man, that ruined my day.
It's kind of funny that you say this, and the reason why I laugh, because this is kind of something that applies into all different areas, like because men are supposed to get the best of you. That's what we do, right? And so even with my daughter, I have to do the same thing. So even though it's in a place where people don't think about it, you were intimidated because you knew that he was going to expect what he saw in you, which was more than what you sometimes maybe think that you could do at the time. But that's what's actually necessary in pretty much all areas of life.
I looked up to Vic, though. That's the thing, because Vic's quality of work was so high, and his standard of output was so high. And, other studios necessarily weren't on the same wavelength on some occasions. I'm just going to put that out there. But his quality of work was so beyond most other people that I worked for, that when I went to work for him, I knew I had to bring my A++ game. Am I saying that right?
But I'd say so.
But that's a good thing, to be at your best all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think you came in when it was second ownership, when it was known as Manwin. I don't think we've met with the original frat bro Mansef guys. But yeah, I mean, we were busy. That studio, the first one, was 16,000 square feet, and we had multiple crews, and we were outputting sometimes 2-3 scenes a day, 25 shoots a month. I mean, that's really what it was. And then we had the live shows. I mean, it was busy. There was a lot on my shoulders But I think the reason why we were so busy was because I treated it like a business and it was highly
Right.
professional.
I just wanted, just kind of, because you said 2-3 scenes a day, but how much production time actually goes into that? Just because, like, I mean, a lot of people don't think about that, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I mean, you're talking about actual shooting could be 4 or 5 hours, but you've got makeup, you've got hair, you've got all of that stuff. And the actual sex scene, that was like the easy part, especially when you had two professionals, where you'd be
Right.
done in half hour, 35 minutes. But the lead up with their ridiculous stories they came up with, and the pictures, and the pretty girl pictures, and the intro videos. I mean, and
Don't
depending,
forget the
like
stunt work, Vic.
sometimes. Yeah, there was multiple sets going on under this one roof, and we operated out of that for 6 years until the Mind Geek people took over, and then that's when I had to
Yeah.
downsize, and I bought the other studio. I didn't tell them I bought the studio because that was going to be my exit strategy when the porn music ended, and that's why I have such a quiet, blissful life now, because that risk of buying that studio when my back was against the wall, with dealing with people that I really didn't like or appreciate in MindGeek, that was the biggest swing I ever took, but it worked out for me. So that's why I'm here now.
Okay, so what can you kind of elaborate on working with people that you didn't like? Like, what was the issues you mean?
So the original guys, I mean, they were the frat bros from Montreal, from Concordia University, that knew how to market porn on the internet. And they were actually, I would say out of all of them, they were probably the best dudes. And in a lot of ways, it was because of how they treated me. They appreciated me. They took care of me, gave me bonuses, like really just appreciated what I brought to the table. And then, and you will be surprised by this, they started getting squeezed by the mafia up in Montreal.
I'm
And
You don't
shocked.
this was,
say.
Shocked.
You
yeah,
don't say.
exactly. And this was
Shocked, I
the
tell
time
you.
when they were like ready to start families. So when the squeezing was happening, and there was an article I think in one of the French newspapers in Montreal that kind of details all of this. But they were looking for a quick buyer, and then they bought. They found a guy named Famian. I don't know if it's Thalman, whatever. He wound up buying the company, and at the time, I think it was for like $40 million, and I was like, "Oh, good for them! They made a ton of money." It was
Yeah.
$140 million. That's how much they bought. But
Wow.
apparently that was well under market value because they were looking to get like a quick exit because the mob was squeezing them. Um, and then that was when I met Elizabeth, and this was when Fabian was getting nine-figure loans from Wall Street, and they were
My
buying up
God.
every company in porn that was profitable. Everything they were buying, one after another, tube sites, dating sites, all of this stuff. And that's when they became the porn monopoly. And that's why I called them the porn monopoly. And that was going on for a while. But the thing is we were in the Obama economy, which was terrible, and I
Mm.
liken that second ownership as like the fat cats at the strip club that were just making it rain, and everyone was just jumping up for money, like I was.
Hmm.
Um, but it still wasn't soulless yet. It didn't seem to be soulless yet. There still was a modicum of respect for me and what
Hmm.
I did, and they kept us busy with the work. And I think in a lot of ways they were like, "Look, Vic's a professional, so we're just gonna like keep just backing him because people seem to like to shoot for him because he's
Yeah.
professional." And then, of course, all good things come to an end. He gets arrested for tax evasion. And then you have some people from inside the organization, Faraz Antoon, who is one of the villains of the story, as well as David Tassilo. And then the guy who owned RedTube, they all bought Fabian shares, and then it became MindGeek. And that was when, like a helium balloon that's like slowly leaking air, all that helium was joy, and that joy was slowly getting sucked out of that balloon. And I dealt with them for about 6 years. But when I talk about respecting and appreciating those who got them there, they didn't have that. They viewed everyone as replaceable, and they
Sure.
just made everything about the job difficult. And now we're starting to get into like the content requests and
Mm-hmm.
all of the ridiculousnesses that we were doing, and making sure that the ads were the most important thing that we were shooting, not the sex itself, not the performers, but the ads, because they wanted to get people to join browsers, and you only do that if you have click-worthy ads. And I mean, that's the way it was going. And I mean, I was basically getting ground down into a nub where, I was becoming a bastard to work with. I had to microdose LSD towards the end of my tenure to keep
I
myself
remember
uh,
that.
like happy, and pleasant, because I was getting it from all levels, from the top to my crew, who found every reason to bitch about anything on any given day, and then performers, which they weren't all like Elizabeth. They were actually a lot unlike Elizabeth, where they weren't prepared and they didn't really seem to have respect or anything. So that's where it was going. And, I clawed my way to the finish line, not knowing that a little virus was going to be that finish line. But that's when it all ended for me.
Oh
That whole
wow.
thing was a saving grace for a lot of people, Vic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Whole
me
thing.
as well. Me as well. I
Mm-hmm.
am nothing but grateful for it, because it forced me to look at everything and really examine things, and I guess in a lot of ways saved my life, because I was doing a lot of drugs
Yeah.
to stay normal, you know?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're getting under that kind of stress and you're hating your life, it's probably time to do something different. Because
Sure.
right, if your heart explodes because you're stressed, it's not going
Yeah,
to help you anyway, right? So,
right.
and
Yeah.
especially what they're all involved with now. I mean, you're probably like, I'm glad I'm gone.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I always looked at it like this. I'm going to ride this wave until I crash on the beach or land gracefully, um, and I'm going to squeeze every drop of water slash money out of the porn sponge before it was all over. I mean, that was really the goal. And yeah, I stayed in it longer because of the money. But yeah, I will tell you, when all of when the House of Mind Geek started to burn, and it really caught on fire when the New York Times expose came out in late 2020 after I was gone. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, things really worked out as they were supposed to. And I really did max out all of the money that I possibly could from the company to justify dealing with such bastards on a daily basis.
Yeah, I don't blame you for leaving in that point, especially with that kind of stuff that was going on. Elizabeth, I want to kind of uh, touch on some stuff, because I remember you connected me with Vic from that post on X where you talked about like him kind of being a kind of solid force for you going
He
through and
was.
making this decision. So you want to
He,
kind of elaborate on that and how
I
you're,
do. I
yeah,
do. Thank you for giving me the chance to do that. So much that there is so much that we have yet to discuss about this industry. Um, but there are actually good people. There are good people. Vic, for me, was one of those good people. I could always depend on knowing that he would tell me the truth, which was one of the reasons I so deeply, highly respected him, was because I knew Vic's unfiltered. He doesn't have a filter. So if he believes something to be true, he's going to say so, even if that comes at a cost of, pleasantries or, you know,
I, I
a
it's
relationship or money. He's going to say the truth. So when I started to notice things and they started to rub me the wrong way, they started to make that spidey sense twitch that, hey, this is wrong. And I would somehow mention it to him, or I would bring up a complaint to him. Vic would always tell me that I'm trying to watch my language here. Right, I'm trying, you guys. I'm trying. But Vic would always tell me the unfiltered truth, and he would always set me on a path to make decisions which were right for me. I absolutely love that about him. And a lot of people don't know that about Vic. A lot of people maybe didn't get to see that side of him, but because I had that that because I had that, I don't want to say relationship because that sounds that sounds wrong too. But I had this rapport with Vic where I could go to him with something that maybe I couldn't talk to other people about. Like, hey, Vic, I'm noticing a lot of these scenes, they're starting to become questionable. A lot of these scripts are starting to really get taptoeing with that line. And do we really want to be doing this? And we would have a conversation, and I would make decisions about future things that I would accept and performances that I would do because of the conversations that we would have. And I never really told people about that, but I always look forward to being in Vic's office because I knew I would get that time with him.
Oh, that's good. But, sorry, go ahead, Kaysha. You look like you're going to say something.
No, I was going to say that's amazing because not everybody has that person in the industry that they can really rely on to be like a voice of reason, that you can come together as like almost like a team, knowing that you kind of have the same mindset. You're in it as like, I'm here for the business, I'm here for the money, I just got to do what I got to do kind of thing. But we are realistic about what's going on because like I've heard a lot of people say in the industry, you know, there's like a lot of fake stuff and people will, you know, they will kind of just do things for the money because a lot of people are just in really awful situations and they'll just be like, it is what it is. But the fact that you could actually go to him and have a real conversation, be like, you know what, yeah, like this is what we need to do, like, and I care about you going forward, I care about me going forward. That's amazing, I think, because like I think a lot of people would probably be in better situations if they had someone like that. Like coming out of the situation would be easier if they had that person that they could talk to like that and really just be like that, you know, that good guidance and that friend.
Well, like I always say, I'd rather be hurt by the truth than comforted with the lie.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
Like,
Oh yeah.
just give me the straight goods. Tell me what you think.
Yeah.
I would rather hear the truth, even if I got angry, then I still respect someone for telling me the truth, because lying to someone just makes everything worse for everybody, right?
Sure. And I think also it really how I got into the business and where I came from, which was a mainstream production, and knowing that that's how you need to run a day because production dollars are on the line. But at the same end, it was when I first got into the business, I made a promise to myself. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, all right, dude, if you're going to do this, don't lose your soul in the process and stay in the light. So that was really my mantra every day. And for those in the business that I saw goodness in them, and you didn't see it a lot, but I saw it with Elizabeth and I saw it with a few others. They got to see that side of me where, okay, I can shut off the business switch for a while and let's just look out for the performer. I mean, you always want to look out for the performer, but I think I would say there were some people that deserved a little bit more, and Elizabeth was one of them. And there were a few others as well, where you know that's a good human, and we're all in this together, and you know they are appreciating me and my time and respecting me and my time just as much as I want to respect their time. Anytime anyone showed up on one of my sets, we were ready to go. So we're not wasting anyone's time, especially the performers. When performers would waste our time, it would usually send me into an orbit, but it was just they were showing themselves as being having no respect or no consideration of others or making about them. And those who did that, I didn't look at them with special eyes that I've looked at Elizabeth with, because you know they were there because we were all there to get through this porn battle, which every day was a battle, really. Some days were easier than others, but every production day, especially when you throw sex on top of it, it's a high pressure situation. And if you want to keep the gig going, you have to keep delivering. So that was what was on my shoulders on a daily basis.
The stories we could tell, Vic.
Well, I told a lot of them, and maybe we should brainstorm because I'm thinking about a second book, you know. So I want to hear like the things that I didn't touch on in the first one.
Oh boy!
And I guess a lot of people who don't have really any exposure to this, they have an idea of things of how people are, and they think, you know, maybe what they watch and so forth, because. Like, and you look at social media, and you know, social media is not exactly the way it looked in the real world. But even sitting around, like, from listening to people talk and stuff, outside of that, people don't look at people the same way. Like they look at them, they're
Right.
like, oh, they must be stupid or this or that, or they must be X, Y, and Z, and like a long list of
Mm-hmm.
things, and so forth. But people don't think about it like that. You run up to people that have integrity because they think that, well, they must just all be sleazy, whatever. Like, seeing in the back
Right.
a hotel room, like with the fighting with the cockroaches, right, for
Mm,
space, right?
mm,
So
yeah.
You wouldn't believe it, it might fascinate people to learn that a lot of folks in the industry are very spiritually inclined, of different persuasions, right? Of many different persuasions. A lot of them go to set, do the job, and then go back to lives that include families, spouses, children, extended family, and faith. So, many people that I've met of different, orientations have faith. And, they lean on that faith when they're not going to set and detaching themselves from the work that they do. But then when they leave the set, they have a whole separate life that they go back to. And a lot of that includes faith.
Mm,
you just opened a can of worms because I got
I
questions, right?
know. Great segue, right?
mm, mm.
Speaking of faith, how did you?
Uh-huh.
Because when did you have your sort of come to Jesus moment, right?
Oh, the
And
come to Jesus moment, literally. Literally
yes,
come
and
to
and
Jesus.
were you still working in the industry when that happened? Like, or
I
was it
was.
like? And how long is it before you ended up leaving? So let's just start with one. I mean, I asked a bunch.
Oh, that is a fascinating ball of worms, which we are going to throw into the lake and hope. But you know what? It all ties into everything that Vic was saying, and it all ties into the saturation and the increasing awareness that I was experiencing of just how massive the child trafficking, human trafficking ring was. Before 2020, I had no reason to care. I had no reason to know that that was actually a thing. But in 2020, I became increasingly aware of just how large this was and how real it was and how close to home it is. Not my house, but what I'm saying is it's here. It's not something that's overseas or in some random country. It is here. And I didn't know that. And when I started to become aware of that, I started to ask questions and I started to look around and I started to learn. And I'm like, starting to understand what the work I'm doing has to do with the people that are doing these things. And I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the day that I was sitting in my office because I had opened a studio after, the moment I decided to leave making, scenes with others was a different moment. But my come to Jesus moment was when I had opened my own studio. Actually, Vic was a mentor to help me to do that too, because I wanted to leave performing for that very reason, because I had started to understand how my performance was connected to encouraging people who were committing harm against others. And I was sitting in my studio one day and I was preparing a live broadcast of just general mentorship, for women or men who wanted to get out of the work and do other things. And I was doing my best, kind of new. And during one of the prep sessions that I was doing for this broadcast, I happened to open the Bible. I happened to open it because I wanted a reference point for something, right? And then I started to read it. And I was kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. And then all at one time, it was like 1,000 conversations that happened in my brain and my heart. All at one time, I was like, oh, I have been messing this up my whole life. I did not understand the whole Jesus thing, the whole why he died thing, the whole, I didn't get it. And all in one moment, I got it. And I was just kind of like, oh, wow, everything changes. In that one single second, everything changed. I became a different human being. And then I learned that's what the whole accepting grace and, giving your life to Christ. I accepted Christ as my savior right then and there. And I was like, oh, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. How could I not know? And I spent like the next few weeks crying. Like, how could I not know my whole life? I'm in my 40s and I'm just now getting it. And I'm like, wow. And it's been almost 3 years now, almost 3 years to the day. And I've learned so much. And there's so, I don't want to monopolize your show, but like I've learned so much and I've got so much peace and so much clarity. And it's just so much happiness. Even on the worst of days, everything is always going to be okay. And I want to share that with everybody. Okay, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
that's fine. We'll have to have a conversation and dig deep into that, because there's a lot of stuff that I want to ask. We don't have the time for that now.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is that people, well, because I mean, I'm an inquisitive person. I got lots of questions. I got kicked out of class many times for asking too many questions or the wrong kinds of questions.
Same.
Right? So, I mean, but people will think about it and you know, like, and you see this all over social media. They're like, they think that just because of the line of work that you were doing, that you're just automatically the devil. And
oh no.
And people's ideas of people have to change, because we may not like something that somebody does, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is a complete terrible human being that should be wiped off the face of the earth, right? Like, I mean, if anybody has family, you know that you love your family, and sometimes your family pisses you off more than anybody else on planet Earth. Or if you're ever married, your spouse will have grind your gears more than anybody. So anybody who's been in a relationship understands this. So, like, why do we have to just sit down and just write a person off without ever seeing them? This is the kind of thing that I don't like to see, because I mean, that's stupid, right?
Well, the Bible says that we hate the sin and not the sinner, because the flesh is different than the soul. The soul is what's in play. The soul is the reward of the war that's happening between good and evil. So when the flesh does something bad, the soul still has a chance to be saved. The soul can still accept, that gift, that sacrifice. And then the flesh is still going to do things from time to time, but we can always turn back and refocus.
Well, I sit down and I tell people that all the time, that we all do wrong things. And I'm saying, if somebody walks up and punches you in the face, your first intention is not going to be good, right? Like, you're going to want to do something very bad. And that's sometimes we just restrain ourselves from doing something bad, right? Because we know that you shouldn't. And some things obviously you should never do, but I don't know anybody who's never done anything they didn't agree with. I don't know.
One of the things that was the most powerful transformations in me after I did begin my walk with Christ was I started to see people differently. I started to see things differently. I started to see the suffering in the actions of others versus the anger that I would relate to things happening in the world. I see their suffering. I see the condemnation that they feel they're trapped in. I feel sometimes that people, and I see that sometimes people do certain things and commit certain acts because they feel like they have no other choice. They feel that that's the only path that's available to them, or they feel they're too far gone. They've done too much. And there isn't a more peaceful, happier, more joyful way to exist, more joyful way to live. Now, I know, Vic, that you have a different, you have a unique sense of peace. You have a unique way of seeing things. I'd love to hear about that, because I've always looked at you and thought, how is that guy so zen?
Can we get into that right after we take a commercial break? Yes.
Absolutely.
I hear every day about the products you all wish MyPillow carried. Well, guess what? We probably do. Slippers, bathrobes, pet beds, blankets, mattresses, sleepwear, loungewear, duvets, comforters, pot holders, aprons, oven mitts, and so much more. And they're all on sale. For example, get our best-selling standard MyPillows for only $14.98. Body pillows, $29.98. 6-piece bath towels or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase, $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And I've never done this before. When you spend $100 or more, you're going to get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
All right. So again, if you like the MyPillow stuff, I mean, you know where to go. MyPillow.com/Karis. Use the promo code. You can call 845-2942, obviously 800. It's right there. Get good stuff. Pillows, beds, bath sheets, all that kind of good stuff. Kitchen stuff too. I mean, go ahead. All right. So Vic, back to you.
Well, I think I was just a good actor, to be honest with you, because she saw someone who was completely zen. But no, I think
I
the truth
did.
is it is upbringing. I was taught well. I was taught to respect people, be considerate of people, treat people how you want to be treated. That was always my first step in everything, and having a good moral code overall, which is not screwing anyone over, being very transparent. And I applied that to working in this business that was full of people who were not exactly that, I would say. But it didn't mean that I had to, I guess, reduce myself because I was surrounded by a lot of people like that. But I also think, too, when you're in production, it's important, to kind of remain stoic and unflappable, because if you're leading the whole cause, which is this production, and you're flying off the handle or you're putting everyone on edge, you are not going to get a good product at the end of the day, because everyone's going to be stressed. I mean, it was already stressful anyway. So I would say that I always leaned into being the strong, silent, even though I had rage inside of me because of how a day was going. I didn't show that because I didn't think it would be good for the objective of the day. However, once I left and I was making sense of myself and shedding this role of what I was for the previous, 18 to 20 years, and really processing it all, that's when I actually started leaning in to Stoicism and reading the teachings of Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and all of the ancient Stoics, because you learn to be more present, and you learn to not yet allow the things that are out of your control to send you into any kind of rage or have anxiety of the future. It also teaches you to not dwell so much on the mistakes of your past, especially if you learn from them. If you learn the lessons, then don't worry about the past anymore. And because you really don't have much control over the future, don't have anxiety over the future. Instead, focus on today. Focus on being the best possible human you could be in this present moment. Now, while a lot of it was already there, it really got fine tuned after I left the porn business. And I will tell you, in a lot of ways, I think it's good that there is the porn industry for a lot of people who are in it, because the truth is, I ran a business that paid employees, that paid taxes, that supported people and their families, and
Yeah.
the industry does that for some. And the truth is, if there wasn't a porn industry for some of the people that I know in the industry, I don't know how they would contribute to society. So I think overall, it comes down to the fact that we aren't the scum of the earth. We're actually contributing to this economy and to society as a whole. Just even if you don't necessarily like the message or what we are producing, we are contributors as opposed to drainers of the system.
Well, funny you say that. This is kind of like I see another side of this, which I noticed this, and this is where I have an issue, and it's not with the industry itself, but it's the factors that are being manipulated to drive it in a certain way. Because when I began to look at started to look at a lot of the women on social media, like Elizabeth and Lisa Ann and some of the other women, and even some of the young, they're incredibly smart, right? And then some of the men are the same way as well as the ones I've heard. When you're driving these people into that situation at this point in time, they're like, you need, when you're watching the younger generation, there's nobody to guide them. And when you're trying to take the best and the brightest, and like when they talk about the finances, which is driving a lot of people to stay longer than they are, when they need those minds to deal with the younger ones that are like, they are completely off the rails. Right, that's where I have an issue, because they're using the government is driving behind this because they're printing money like it's water. They're trying to turn us into Venezuela, especially here in Canada, and all of this stuff, which is only going to drive that need. And then the smarter ones are going to be the ones who make money off it. But we need the smarter ones to help the ones that are just completely destroyed, so that we don't get to where we're going faster. And this is where I'm like, I look at this and I'm like, there's a crisis. And then when they try to come out, they just try to destroy them and just write them off. But I'm like, you know what? These guys are way smarter than a whole lot of you. You need to hear them, especially with the experience they have.
Yeah, I always appreciated when. Sorry, we're all going at the same time.
Go ahead, guys.
No. I always appreciated when I saw someone in the business that it wasn't really a hand-to-mouth situation, that they saw themselves as a brand and a business, and they worked to continue and sustain that and grow that. My hat was always off, because I tip my hat to them, because truth is they were looking at the bigger picture. And I appreciated that, because that's what I was doing as well. This wasn't just, okay, I'm working just to make my bills. It was more to have something bigger for the future. And I see a lot of people in the porn industry now, and they do need a porn Yoda like me guiding them in a lot of ways, because like I see them flying the false flags of Pornhub gear and Brazzers gear and wearing this stuff, and I'm like, there's so many different ways you could go, and you're not going in the right direction. But it's that's the battle, I would say.
Well, yes, and a lot of that is being driven to make people that way by putting them under pressure where they can't make proper decisions, and they have to live hand to mouth, right? Like that's a problem, right? So if when the government gets involved in doing stuff, it's always bad. That's just my philosophy. Or you were going to say something, Elizabeth?
I was. Yeah, a lot of the people who get into the industry these days, and a lot of the people who have been in the industry these days, they might not seem like rocket scientists to some people, and some of them are, some of them aren't. Everyone is meant to experience what they go through in life in order to create the person that they're eventually meant to be. So for all of those who have this disastrous, catastrophic experience, they have a choice to go through what it is that is happening to them and make a choice to come out on the other side in whatever way that they choose. You know, we can't keep blaming other people for choices that individuals make, because everyone is equipped with free will. Everyone. You know, there are people who are forced into situations, yes, but how they come out of that situation is a choice that they make. So while they're going through it, it's one thing. But when that experience is over, what they do with it is up to them. Like your daughter, for instance. Your daughter went through something horrible. She went through something, traumatic and awful. What did she do with that experience? She turned it into something good. She turned it into a service, to share that information with the public. She didn't decide to fall into darkness or to disappear or, to claim that, people owed her something. These are things that I think we need to start holding people accountable for how they react to life experiences.
Yes, I believe in personal accountability. I 100% say that. And I'm not sitting down and say, it's just that when we all have, like, if you ever have a chance, read a book called Propaganda by Edward Bernays. If you read that book,
I probably have it on my shelf here.
Everything that he says is what they're doing now, the government and like all of this nonsense. So when they okay, for example, if you steal from someone and you continually
Right.
steal from them so they can't make money, so that you limit their choices, you make it easier for them to do the wrong choice. This is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking
Right.
about regular life choices. I'm talking
Oh,
about,
you mean
like,
enabling?
yes, where they're making it very easy, the path easy to do something wrong, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to
Sure.
doing right. Like, for example, they're letting out criminals, but if you say something that's true, they're trying to put you in prison. Like, these are the
Oh,
types of
yeah.
things that I'm talking about, that they're using to push people
The
into certain
conditioning.
situations. Because if you look at the way our government is working right now in our society, if you
They're
help
horrible
people,
people.
you get punished.
Mm.
If you try to help,
Yeah.
honestly help someone, they're punishing you. Like,
Punishing you. Yeah.
like, why? This is
Yeah, and this is what I was. Sorry.
that's what I'm saying. Go ahead, Keisha.
Yeah, I was going to say this is what I was talking about when I was a kid, the conditioning that they gave to my generation, where if you did stand up and do the right thing, or you tried to defend yourself against a bully, or try to defend another kid against a bully, you're getting counseling, you're getting more abuse. They turn all the teachers against you. You become isolated. And that isolation actually follows you throughout high school, because the teachers create the circumstances where you will be seen as the villain consistently. And I watch this even now as myself being a substitute teacher, and it's like this is also in the justice system and everything else. So it's like when you mentioned, Elizabeth, that you viewed Vic in a certain way, and he was like, oh well, I was just a really good actor. And you mentioned how you were doing your
I saw
squeeze
it.
the last drop out of the sponge. It's like, in my
Yeah.
mind I was like, that's kind of like how strong men think, though. Men are like, I'm going to
Right.
do whatever is necessary to get to the end. And I hear my dad say kind of similar things, like, well, I might drop, but it is what it is, got to keep going until I drop. And I'm like, I can't hear that. But because I was raised by a man that way, and I have like a
Mm-hmm.
father who's very well structured and disciplined, even though I went through these things, I'm like, okay, here's what I can do with it. But a lot of the people who
Right.
don't have that, they're going around with all this conditioning and all this, like what my dad said, maybe they'll steal all of your
Sure.
money, put them in a financial situation where they're like between a rock and a hard place. And then it makes it easy for a lot of people to make the wrong decisions, because they don't have that person that they can go to, maybe like you did, Elizabeth, with Vic, and be like, hey, what do I do? What do you think about this? And it's very compromising.
And let's be real. Like, we're older. Like, Vic, Elizabeth, you're all kind of in the same age group. The guys that are younger, like, and we all have different experiences that were less than stellar in the public eye, let's just say. But these
Sure.
things are necessary in order to teach people that if you have these challenges, that you can navigate them. But there's nobody there to help these
Yeah,
guys with the challenges.
thinking.
And this is what I'm saying, is that they're blocking the people that have the experience from going through these things and saying, listen, this is what you need to do, or this can help you, from getting the people who have no skills to get
Yeah.
there. And
Right.
this is where I have the issue, because I sit down, I
Yes.
listen, and this is some of the most intelligent, reasonable conversations that I've had in the last few years. But most people would just sit down and think that that's not the case, and then they're going to give, like, I mean, look at a lot of people that get platformed. That, I mean,
Yes.
they're dumber than a bag of
They're for
hammers,
sale.
right?
Yes.
The,
Exactly.
the whole social media thing now these days, once they started monetizing certain platforms, people started to pump out content not for necessarily for sharing truth, but to get that paycheck from said platform. And that's when I stopped taking them seriously.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
exactly it. But we need people to just tell it like it is, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
That's why I get kicked in the face all the time, because I don't care. I'm going to tell you the
Exactly.
truth, right?
Yep.
I'm working on it, Dale. When, for the past couple of years, I originally embarked forward to be able to open up an organization or a company, and several others have already done that. But I wanted to bring my own personal experience, my own knowledge of being in the industry and being a sex worker and then leaving. And it's not an overnight process, but my endeavor was to show people it's possible, to tell them how to do it. I don't just want to be somebody who puts up, cute pictures or a meme or, a video once in a while. I want to be in the trenches, guiding people through it when they want the help.
I I I absolutely 100% agree, and I can see you doing that. Like, it is very easy, and you've got the right mindset to do it. 100%.
Yes, I was just thinking. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, you, Lisa Ann, Vic, people like even Layla that we see, we clip her sometimes. There's some other girls whose names escape me, we clip sometimes. People like that should have the major platforms, because when people would actually sit down and listen to what you guys are saying, it would help so many people, because all of you are exceptionally intelligent. Like my dad said, like people would think that, you sit down and listen to people that come from your guys' past and it's like whatever. But the conversations that I've had with people that come out of your guys' past have been far more valuable and intelligent and useful across the board than when I've talked to people, some of which who are highly educated, because you guys have a certain experience across the board and understanding of things that most people would never even piece together. Like looking at the bigger picture with everything, whereas most people are stuck with what's in front of their face. And that's why I'm like, people like this need to have way more of the platform, because they're more solution oriented and they understand every step along the way, how to get there. They understand how people got to where they were and how they get to the end result and everything in between. And people need the circumstances outlined for them so that they can start having that critical thinking, because everything today, they always give you the outcome. Oh, this is bad or this is bad. Okay, why? Tell me why. Show me how. The who, what, when, where, why, how. Through it step by step and let's fix it. And then let's go there. If you can't take me there, then be quiet, because all you're doing is making life worse. You're not helping them. You're shaming them into something that's going to actually hurt them and fuel an addictive process. So yeah, I 100% you guys.
Also find joy in the process. The number one reason I hear people stay in the work after they're ready to go is money. And the number two reason is, it's money. So I have some learning under my belt. Right. It's the money. A lot of people, when they realize that addiction's taken over their life, or it's cost them relationships, or it's cost them future opportunities, and they're ready to go. Well, now they're already stuck because they've established a lifestyle that depends on that money. And I've also learned that there are a lot of predatory companies out there who prey on people who want a way out. And in my heart, I put my foot down. I'm not going to be one of those people. I'm giving information away. I'm going to post, my things on social media. I hope that somebody in their moment of need sees it. But I also want to show people the joy of the struggle. There is joy in the struggle. There is peace in the freedom of it. That's what I want to share. I want to share the happiness and the life that can, that can be reinvigorated inside of someone once they decide that money is not the most important thing to keep them trapped. But there is money available to be made afterwards. I'm not saying you got to be broke, but I'm just saying, there is an initial transition.
And I get that. And this is where I sit down and I have like respect for what Vic is doing, what you're doing by telling people like it was and being straightforward, because you don't see that. Like, I mean, I always had a saying that the road to hell is paved with yes men. And that's this is what we're seeing too much of, because I want somebody that's gonna like call me on something or say no, that's stupid, right? Because don't watch me go and break my neck,
Vic.
right? Like, because I wouldn't do that to one of my friends. Like, if I didn't like you, then I'd be like, sucks to suck. But if I had right, but
no pun intended. Hey.
These are things that need to be done, and you got to be able to laugh too, man. Come on, let's be real.
Yeah. If you don't laugh sometimes, how are you going to get through that day? But you've been. I watched Vic. That's one of the things I also wanted to mention. I always watched him very closely. I always watched what he was doing in his office, behind the camera. If he, when he was behind the camera, like God, for like a second of my career, you were behind the camera or something. But I watched him. I watched the moves he made. I watched how he treated people. I watched the decisions he employed. And I said, I want to do something like that. And even when the industry itself wasn't something I wanted to do, I wanted to do things like Vic did. And I'm happy that worked out for both of us.
Yes.
Good. I'm glad I could be an inspiration. That's that makes it worth it. It really does. Because a lot of times you get this down on the fact that the people that you're around, especially in the business, it's like, are they? It sound you know I don't want to sound arrogant in saying that, but it's almost like they're not worth the time because they're not appreciating the fact of the humanity that you are at least giving them, or the consideration you're at least giving them. So the fact that you noticed and you were keeping an eye out and you were watching and you applied it, I appreciate that, because it was very rare to see that.
I see everything, even like now, today, everywhere I go. And that is part of the pilgrimage that, the Lord has me on right now, is to live an extremely humble life in order for me to be where I'm at and be around the people that I come in contact with every day, because I'm meant to learn something. So everywhere I go, I'm learning something. I'm getting a message. I'm being taught something every day. And you are a powerful influence in my journey.
And this is something that we're running up on time, so I'll get kind of close.
Oh, snap! I got that heart out. Yep.
Yes. So this is kind of the things that we like to see, and that you can see that no matter where you are in life, that you can find somebody that can be like that will help you along the way. And people have to begin to start looking that not everything is the conventional way of doing things, the way that nobody's path to going anywhere is a straight line. Like, I mean, we like to try to say that in physics, but in reality, it doesn't always work that way. But this is what we need to see, that you can find someone to help you in any spot of the way. And if you have the opportunity to help someone, you should, right? Regardless of the situation. And so this is something that should be done. So we'll give you guys both get a minute. We'll go with you, Vic. Say what you need to say to the people.
No, I think that the whole act of being humble, humility, being grounded, shedding ego. I'm in that same space right now where I live a very simple life that every day is very joyful. And I'm grateful to have gotten through the porn muck, because it was dirty and dark and trying at times. But if there's anything that I would say to the generations in porn, the younger generations, is be humble and shed the ego, because there's no place for it in the porn business. There really isn't. I don't even know if there's any place for it in the real world. But I would say someone who is sending people to Mars, or otherwise, they have more of a right to be less humble than those in the porn industry. So I say, keep walking that humble path, and it should lead you into good places.
See,
that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, sorry. I was talking to myself again. So Elizabeth, you got your
my final words.
Yes.
Well, I want to be grateful to you and Kaysha and Vic for joining me today and for allowing me to be here. It's been quite some time since I've had these lights up, since I've been in this chair in front of this camera. And I've been asking the Lord to tell me when it's time for me to come back to broadcasting, because he's had me learning a lot at a very rapid pace. And there were some things missing from my understanding of scripture and of people in general that I needed to learn before coming back. So I don't know. I just do what he tells me to do. But I wanted to thank you all for having me here today. And I wanted to tell the people out there who are watching, no matter what it is that you think of me or of Vic or of other people who are performers, they are people. They are human beings, and every one of them has a story. So before you decide without talking to these individuals that they're not worthy of being a part of the world around you. Why don't you ask yourself what God would think of you at one point in your life when you probably weren't worthy either? So each one of those individuals is worthy of the love and of the compassion, in their time of need. Should they decide they would like a way out, they don't need to be shamed. They need to be welcomed. They need to be comforted, because that's what Christ would do for each of us.
Yes, and I wholeheartedly agree. And this is something that we'll have to talk about on the back end, because this needs to really be done. I will close here with a prayer, and then I will give my daughter the final thoughts. All right. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your grace and your mercy and the discussion that was here, and help people that they would begin to see other people and learn to love their brothers themselves. And Father, I ask of you this day to bring the men and the women together to rebuild their families, their churches, their community, and their nation, that we can have some peace and safety for the children who need it the most, is my prayer. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Dr. Prayer, as always. And thank you again, Elizabeth and Vic, for joining us today. It was so awesome. We're going to have you back in the future. Guys, honestly, I think we need to really open our mind and understanding to um, the way that other people can be utilized for the purpose of bringing more people together and fixing problems and even salvation and things like that. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people have prejudices that is blocking the door of opportunity for healing and solutions for everyone across the board. Error does not sanctify. And I say that because a lot of people, I know that I have not come out of that life. I had a very different experience being a survivor of trafficking, but because people have a very poor view of a lot of things, they treat a lot of the victims the same way as they would, surprisingly, people who come out of that life. And there's a value that those people have to offer to the world. They are people, God has given us all a gift that we need to use to help other people. And that means we have to work together with them. We have to listen to them, and we have to hear that knowledge and experience that they have. And so I'm so blessed that you guys came on and talked with us today. That's amazing. We hope to have you back in the future. Thank you, everybody, for your time and considerations. Please go check them out on their socials as well. We'll check you guys in the next one. And to my dearest Karis, until we meet again, my friend, we will.